Back to KWSM Social Media Help Desk. I'm your host, Princess Ruff, and I'm here with Rick Ormsby, Managing Content Editor in Atlanta, and Content Editor Meredith Ashburn. So today we have some exciting news shaking up in the social media news bubble. So right now, Instagram has added GIFs to the replying feature for direct message. Well, for when you're replying to an Instagram story. So they already had this for direct messages, but we all love GIFs, so they added GIFs to replying to stories. So what do y'all think about that?
Oh, I love GIFs. I mean, GIFs have become that next extension out of memes. It's just the next way that we all communicate. And so it's one of those things, if anything, it seems surprising that this hasn't happened sooner.
Absolutely.
It's built into so many different ways of communicating these days. It's already built into your Facebook Messenger. It's built into your texting apps. So having it included in this way for Instagram just makes absolute sense.
Yes.
Yeah, GIFs are probably my favorite form of communication because sometimes words just aren't enough. You need that moving picture. You need that genuine, reaction.
Yes.
They're just so fun.
GIFs, I feel like, just explain things a lot better than a text or a message. Just like, I'm feeling this way, look at it. I love GIFs so much. I have too many of them in my phone.
Same.
I think they account for like 80% of my storage. So go Instagram. So right now, they're really looking to keep this feature around. It's just been rolled out. They announced it last week. So this is really exciting. And I think this is the first feature they announced, like officially announced. All their other features are just kind of like roll out and let people notice. But this is the first one they rolled out, and they announced it, ironically, through Twitter. So that was really, really cool. So go GIFs.
Yeah.
Moving on to LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has had a different shift. They've actually removed something. Their CEO has stepped down. Jeff Weiner, after 11 years of being the CEO of LinkedIn, has chosen to step down. He has done a lot of amazing things for LinkedIn, and one of his biggest accomplishments is being able to take part in LinkedIn $27 billion acquisition by Microsoft in 2016. So that was really, really huge because he's played a huge part in that partnership. And so right now he has chosen Ryan Roslansky as his successor. Ryan was the first person Weiner hired after he became the CEO. So he's kind of groomed him, brought him up through the same pathway that he came up as he was on his pathway to being the CEO. So this is really exciting. It's a huge change. But overall, I think he's really feeling positive about it. I've seen LinkedIn make some huge positive changes in the last year or so. So I would account that to Jeff and his team. And I believe Ryan's going to do a great job. But right now, he said it was the right time to step down, but felt that LinkedIn was in line with his own sense of purpose. So it sounds like a happy farewell.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes when there's a big change in leadership, people want to know, what is this going to mean for the company?
Yeah.
With something like LinkedIn that's been around as long as it has and is so established that really when you have a leadership change, it's much more likely that there's going to be a push to keep things moving forward, to keep moving on the missions that they already have in place, as opposed to anything major shakeups. I don't see that happening. It just wouldn't make much business sense. And I think that comes from, again, having a corporation, an organization that's been around as long as LinkedIn has, that it is so present in social media that there's really it's a hopeful future for them. It's just a change in leadership, but the ship's going to keep moving the direction it's been moving.
I think it's also really comforting to users to know that he has taken this new person under his wing and brought him in from the ground up, teaching him everything that he knows, so that's not much of a stark transition.
I agree with that. I think when I found out about this and read about it, and then I found out like how the new person was chosen, it kind of felt like, okay, this was more maybe like a thing that he was already thinking about and planning for. It doesn't feel like LinkedIn's going to go through this dramatic change, but he's kind of already prepped and groomed this person to take his place. So. Awesome. Good for you, Jeff and Ryan. And last but not least in the news is YouTube. So YouTube is known for being very consistent over the years. It's been around for 15 years. And they haven't done much to change their platform or force changes on their platform. I know people don't really take that too well on the internet, but they have always given users the option to either use the classic mode or use the material design interface. But as of now, well, next month, they're going to be taking away the classic mode option, so you will no longer have the option to stick to the old way of doing things on YouTube. And this is exciting and also a bit weird because I know I'm used to the normal YouTube layout, so I wonder how people are going to react to this. because it's been around so long.
Oh,
so.
I think that it's anytime you have a change like this,
Yeah.
you're going to have that pushback.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when they quit making Polaroid film for the Polaroid cameras, and everybody freaked out and they came back. I don't think YouTube's going to bring back the classic mode, but I do think that there's always going to be resistance.
Yeah.
Change can be just hard to get used to, particularly if you've been using the same thing for a decade or more. But at the end of the day, it's so user friendly, even with the new version, the non-classic version. I don't think that it's going to be too difficult for most people. It's almost like moving on. You're missing that sense of nostalgia of what YouTube Classic once was.
Yeah. I think they were smart to not just throw it at you. They've kind of had both options for a long time now.
True.
But now they're just kind of taking away the older ones and saying you have to use this one. So yeah, I think it's a good transition.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely one of those people that provides some pushback on change. When I like something and I know how to use it well, I kind of get set in that way. But I mean, we've seen so many social platforms change over the years so many times, and people adjust, and then they just get upset about the next change. But everybody adjusts and figures out, oh, this actually is better. This is an improvement. Yeah. So I think YouTube will be the same way.
Well, and the other thing that's interesting is that when you do have these changes, it opens up new doors for maybe there's some new feature in some way that's more conducive to the new platform than it is on the classic. So change isn't always bad. Change is usually leading to something else you might love even more that you didn't know you could love.
Absolutely, and that's actually one of the things they mentioned. The newer version has things that the classic doesn't offer, so they want people to take advantage of those features. So I think it's more so saying, here are better things that we have that you haven't quite taken advantage of, and YouTube wants to make sure their users are using it. So take a pause and enjoy the new change, and while you're pausing, maybe write some blogs. So Meredith's going to talk to you about how to write winning blog posts.
Yes, so I'm very happy that we're talking about blogs today, because that's one of my favorite parts of my job, not only just because I love writing so much, but also because we've talked about multiple times on here about just the benefits that blogging can bring to your company. So I know we've touched on before how blogging can increase your SEO and drive more people back to your website. We've talked about how blog posts can provide great social media posts, on multiple different platforms. But one thing we want to focus on today is how they can really establish a company as a thought leader in the industry. So a lot of companies have started writing blog posts to showcase and show off their knowledge and their expertise in the industry. And so what we're going to talk about today is how to accomplish that, because anybody can just sit down and write a blog about, whatever they know about a certain subject matter. Yeah, anything. But that's not really utilizing best practices, and that's not going to bring in the results that you're wanting.
Right.
So we'll just dive right into these 5 tips on writing a winning blog post. So number 1 is do your research. And so this is kind of split into 2 different points, and the first one may seem obvious, but it is important to note that you have to fact check. So you have to use information from credible sources, and when you're doing this research, you can't just, search a question and then just choose the first article that pops up. You have to actually go in depth, make sure that that source is credible, make sure other people are agreeing and it's been proven, for a matter of speaking. So, but the second point is that some people don't really consider when they're writing blogs is that back end of research before you even start writing is what is my audience actually asking? Yeah. So, what are the things that they're actually looking for? What are the keywords that they're using, So I was wondering what you guys thought of how you come up with these blog topics and how you figure out what people are most often asking.
Yeah, so when I'm thinking about writing a blog, I always put myself in the mind of the consumer or the reader, what would I say to look for this topic? So I wouldn't type, too industry specific. I would maybe type just from someone who's completely clueless and confused, and I take it from there. So you can't write as the expert, because you have to understand your audience is the expert in a way. They know what you don't know, which is their problem. And so the key is to try to get inside their head and label your blog as best you can to attract them based on their problem.
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. I think that it's way too easy to write from the perspective of the product or from the business, because you're involved in it. You're a part of it. That's your perspective. And we tend to, as people and as writers, want to write from our perspective. And the challenge can be putting yourself into the shoes of the end user or the person that's going to be searching. And taking that time to really go back and look at, you can try to replicate it yourself, but the other thing that's helpful is actually looking at what are people asking for? Are there forums? Are there social media channels, yours, your competitors, or someone else's? And look at the type of questions people are asking, and then follow that train. Yeah. Or it's even better if you have access to some sort of pool of people to ask questions, like say, what do you know about this? And if you don't, if it's too formal to have that, then even just go to your friends and family, go to somebody that has no idea what this thing is, and see how they search for it. These are just different ways you can start getting in that mindset of someone that doesn't have all the information you have, and then take what you do know, and you know so very well, and craft it in a way that it's easily findable from someone that is coming from a completely clueless perspective.
Oh yeah, a great example of that, and I love how you said talk to relatives, because my mom is the perfect example of someone, sorry mom, who like literally she thinks of all the questions when it comes to marketing, because she'll be like, well, can you show me how to post something on Facebook? Just post it. Well, how do I post it? Where's the button? So like, if you know how to craft a blog to help someone who literally has no idea about something, I think that'll help with choosing the right title, knowing, their weaknesses and things like that.
I do have to add the caveat. If you're asking your friends and family, they need to match your target audience.
That's true.
That's true.
Uncle Bill may not know as much about skincare products as you're hoping he would, but he may not be the one you're trying to sell them to either. So make sure that whoever you're asking what you're looking for, try to replicate the mindset of that target audience.
For sure.
That is important.
Yeah, I think it's easy, especially when, we're creators and producers of content, it's really easy to forget that we were consumers first. And so it's switching that hat over when you are in the middle of creating, how would a consumer be using this or looking for this?
Absolutely.
So point number 2 is to start with a messy draft. So I think a lot of new writers kind of struggle with this because everybody just wants to dive right in. If they have a bunch of good ideas, they just want to go. And I think the problem with that is that you can get really jumbled and lost in grammar and sentence structure, and before you know it, you've forgotten everything that you're really trying to get across in your blog. So one thing for me that I like to do is in every blog post, I will write like 1 to 2 sentences at the top of what's the point I'm trying to get across, just so I don't forget and I know basically what my thesis is, I guess. And then below that, I'll kind of create like an outline or a skeleton of how I think I want my blog to be laid out and kind of structure it that way. And then I go in and I write the sentences, and then I go in and try to make it sound nice. So it is a process, but it does cut down so much of that time. Because if you just try to like dive right in, you waste so much time perfecting each sentence before you really get to the meat of what you're trying to say.
I agree. And it's easy to get lost in it, like you mentioned. When you just dive right in, you can easily like run on and lose the whole point of your blog. And it's like baking a cake. You got to get all the ingredients, you get the box of mix, and then you put everything together and have a tasty cake. So like I do something very similar. Like I'll start with a sentence and then like blah 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 blah, pull some things together, and then like I shape it as I go. And before I know it, I have like exactly what I'm trying to say rather than just jumping in without thinking about it.
I agree completely. Action with purpose is key. What are you writing this for? What is the end goal? And really not only thinking about what you want them, the reader to learn from it, but then what do you want them to do after they read it? Like go ahead and have in mind, how are you going to lead this into some sort of call to action as well? So have purpose every step of the way. What do we want them to get out of this? And then really, what do we want their behavior to be after they've read it? All of those things need to be considered every step of the way. And then you can go back and make sure that it's presented in a nice, clean way.
Yes, totally agree. So point number 3, or tip number 3, is short, sweet, and to the point, which is exactly what it's trying to say, which is get to the point. So I have been guilty of this so many times, trying to fluff up all of these sentences, when really it's just so much simpler and so much more effective to just say what the audience is there to figure out. You already have their attention. They're already reading your blog. You don't need to make it fancy. They're there for answers. Just give them the answers. Because otherwise they're going to lose interest very easily. So moving into tip number 4 is spend time away from your writing. And I think the 3 of us know how important this is to just kind of take a step back, whether it's in the middle of your blog, if you get, writer's block, or you just get frustrated or whatever, or especially after your blog is done and you finish that first draft, just stepping away, going to get a cup of coffee, talking with a coworker to get new ideas, working on a different project even, and then coming back with a set of fresh eyes can be so good for your perspective you know.
Yeah, I think it's great to take a minute and step away. I know for me, like, my brain is already like, so like if I work on one thing for too long, like especially something as long form as blogs, like my brain will just start to like melt, and so I have to step away and do something else, and then I come back feeling a lot more refreshed and like, okay, I'm ready to go. I have fresh ideas. I have more of a structure. Yes. So a lot of times when I'm feeling that block, I've noticed like stepping away, watching an episode of Netflix, like anything, just let my brain relax. It's really helpful.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, the other value of stepping away too is it gives you a chance to get out of the same words you've read 5 and 10 times over. So coming back after a refresh can sometimes make the editing process a lot more effective. You'll come back and look at your own words and go, oh my goodness, that's not right at all. Oh, I've used the same word 3 times.
It happens to me all the time.
Yes, so I think that it's beneficial both for the creative side as well as the technical side to just take a moment before you do finally put the finishing touches on it. Is it what you wanted to say? Is it getting the right purpose across? And is there anything else I can add to it?
For sure. So tip number 5, I know Princess kind of touched on this a little bit about the importance of a good headline or title to your blog. So a lot more thought has to go into your title than you may think, because not only do you want it to be attention grabbing, but you want it to be searchable. So it has to be similar to what your audience is actually searching for with the keywords, with the phrasing. Like the closer you get to mirroring what they're actually looking for, the more searchable, I guess, your blog will be. So I see a lot of people getting crazy with their blog titles and their headlines, but at the end of the day, even if it's really, really creative, no one's searching for that title. So it's not serving you well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a lot of value in being as creative as you can, but it comes back to, like you mentioned before, with efficiency, with trying to get to the point. In the same way that you want to have your writing be efficient, and it can be very hard as writers, particularly if you come from a creative writing background, to not be flowery in your language. And the title's the same way, in that if it's too off point, if it's too elaborate, you can miss the mark, and you're not getting to the point quick enough. And this ties in not only to the SEO aspect, but also just making sure that when someone's scrolling, if they're scrolling through a list of blogs, if it's coming through a feed, that they see it as something that makes sense to them. If they're not seeing the featured image, can the title stand alone on its own? And it should. People need to know what they're getting into beforehand. It shouldn't be too vague. It should be as connected to the point as you can make it, for searchability and for readability.
For sure. Well said. Well, with that, if you're also looking for other ways to expand your brand awareness and build your audience, I think another continuously emerging form of that is influencer marketing. So, Rick, you want to tell us about that?
Absolutely. So, influencer marketing is come about in the age, really, of social media in a way that you don't only have to have celebrities anymore selling your product. And celebrities were the way to go for all the way back to gladiators selling olive oil. But now, anyone that's an individual that has a following on their own through Instagram, through Twitter, through some aspect of social media, that wants to share their experience with a brand or a product, they can be an influencer. They post on their accounts, and this can be done in exchange for money, or more often than not, particularly with some of the micro influencers, just for the products themselves. There's a huge market built around marketing with influencers by simply sharing the products with them and asking them to leave a review. And this does a lot for you. The first is it's expanding your reach to an entirely new audience. This is perfect for growing your brand awareness. This is really key for any sort of emerging brand, any emerging business, or if you're a brand that's releasing a new product, a different product, something outside of the norm, and you want to reach a bigger audience without going through all the hoops of building it yourself. You can work with those influencers. Whatever they say about your product is going to go out to all of their audience. Now, that does create some problems. You want to make sure that this is a positive relationship, that you that you have an idea as to what they're going to say about it. So the relationship you build with that influencer is key. And that it comes back to the engagement with the customers as well. With the customers don't really want to be seen as a dollar sign. They want to know that the business, whether it's a service you're selling or a product, that they care about the customer.
Absolutely.
Have y'all ever had any experience like that, where you felt that a brand was just selling you a product as opposed to
all
caring?
The time.
Oh yeah, when have I not? That's the real question. All the time. So I really appreciate when brands take the time to not only build a brand that feels welcoming and authentic, but also where they take the time to connect with people where we can like envision ourselves using the product or the service because they look like us, they seem like someone we live next door to. Like one of my really close girlfriends is a beauty influencer, and she looks like someone you would talk to, you know, so it's easy to watch her videos and hear her talk about the hair products. It's just, I think it's a really smart move for brands to take advantage of that, so, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think it has a huge role to play in building up trust.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not only as their brand, but are their products worth it? Like, should I actually go spend my money on this? Someone tell me if this is worth it. And we really want people who are going to be honest. So I think it also kind of speaking into influencers, you can tell pretty quickly, and this goes into your selection of who your influencers are, who's just trying to sell you something and who is actually using the product or, you know, using the service themselves, who can give an honest opinion and really kind of show you what it's all about.
Right. Well, and that comes back to there's a reason why influencer marketing can be up to 11 times more effective than traditional marketing, and it comes back to trust.
Yep.
With celebrities, even if it's a micro celebrity, people tend to build somewhat of a one-way relationship. They value that person's opinion as much as they would a close friend or a family member's, and that's exactly what influencer marketers provide. They've got an audience that connects and trusts them, and your brand, in association with them, you can work off that trust just by having a person that the customer trusts saying, "Hey, I use this." You've already now attached some of the credibility they had with that person back to your brand, your product.
Right.
I think that the other issue is that it has the potential to make you more money as well. 40% of all Twitter users have made a purchase as a direct result from an influencer marketing campaign. Now, there may be some cost with that. Some influencers will charge for their services, but again, as we said before, many won't. They'll just make that, and that's why working with someone that has a smaller following can be as effective or more effective than working with someone that's got the millions of followers. A 10,000 to 100,000 following, that's what we'll call that micro influencer level, really can reach a very solid, trusted audience base, and they can actually influence what those people are doing more so than maybe if you get somebody that's worth millions of followers.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because it goes back to the whole quality over quantity type of thing, because someone who may be a micro influencer may have built more of an authentic connection with their audience really trusts and knows that what they're saying is going to be true, real, genuine feedback about the product, as opposed to a bigger influencer. It may just be, I just want to follow your life, not necessarily buy the things that you're promoting. And so that's kind of like a double-edged sword, really finding the fine line between what influencer works for you and who's the best fit. So I think doing your research and making sure you're figuring out the audience that you want to tap into.
I think it's almost like counterintuitive. You would think that the more followers an influencer has, you would want them more than someone with less followers. But we've seen so many times, as interesting as it is, the people with the most followers have the least amount of engagement on their posts. Because the whole point was to establish authenticity, and then you've lost that because now you're basically a celebrity and you can't reply to everybody, and you know you haven't established those relationships. So there is that awesome middle ground of engagement versus followers and authenticity that you have to find.
Well, the other thing that's interesting is that you have influencers who have made a name for themselves simply by reviewing products and services. And those can sometimes be the cream of the crop because people are coming to them specifically for looking for advice.
Makeup gurus.
Right.
That's exactly what they're known for. It's amazing. So,
some of the most tops of the successful influencer marketing partnerships are in the fashion, beauty, which we just mentioned, food, fitness, and travel, automotive, electronics, entertainment are also a close second, but really this can apply to almost anything you can think of. Social media in general gives us the opportunity to create segments and partitions of interests in a way that has never really been done before. And so with that come these different influencers. So no matter what your industry is, there's probably some level of following. You may not have found it yet, but if you look, it's there. And then tapping into those resources, the people that are already active in it, then if you can't or if you're unable to or unwilling to create your own commercial campaign, if you don't have the resources or the time, whatever the case may be, if it's as simple as sending something to someone else and asking them to include it in theirs, absolutely go for it. But one of the challenges is finding those people. The people that are involved in influencer marketing campaigns, 2/3 of them have said the hardest part is identifying and building a relationship with the influencer.
I can see that for sure.
And that's one of the things that KWSM provides, actually, is we have a large base of influencers that we work with, and we have the team in place to do that research, because it can be challenging to, on your own, just go out and find an influencer.
Absolutely.
Who can you trust? Who can who do you know is going to be effective?
Who's relevant?
Who's relevant?
Right.
That's absolutely key, because someone might have. Did they buy their followers? Did they build them organically?
Big mistake.
Follower count in and of itself is not key.
Right.
And we've seen that time and time again, that engagement is as important as the number of followers that are coming through.
For sure.
What are some ways, are there any ways that you can share that you found influencers in the past, or what's resonated with you?
Well, I've dealt more so with service or like cause-based businesses. And so one thing I've noticed that can work for like service-based businesses who don't necessarily have a product, but you can find like other larger thought leaders in your industry who can maybe come speak for you or do a guest post or be featured on your blog or your video series. And so it's just another avenue of approaching influencer marketing, but I think it's still having that influencer present with your brand, with your company, saying, hey, I support this, is also a great way to bring in more, donors or customers or consumers or supporters or whatever you may be looking for. So I think it's just a different approach, but I think it still works for service-based businesses too.
For sure. I think for me, it's definitely more of the traditional method of influencer marketing. A lot of the influencers that I follow, again, are in the beauty industry. They're reviewing all the skincare and the cosmetics, just things like that. And so I actually find most of them on YouTube, because they do these in-depth tutorials and just different things like that. And then I go in and I follow them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be, depending on, what their industry is. So kind of working almost backwards like that, starting with YouTube and then being like, oh, I can actually follow you on Instagram and see everything that you're posting from all these different companies. So
cool. Well, this has been a very thorough show from influencers to blogs and everything under the sun. So if you're having any trouble with adjusting to all of these platform changes or expanding your audience and building your reach, we have an awesome team at KWSM here that Rick mentioned, where we can help you build out a strategy and really help you reach those marketing goals. You can message us on Facebook, call us, or go to our website, and we'll be more than happy to help you. That's all for today.